ladies and gentlemen. It is with an abiding sense of pride and pleasure that I am first able to introduce to you, by way of a few words, Ambassador Walter Lindner. His Excellency is currently the German ambassador to India. He has many years of travel on roads less frequented and has often marked and marched to, as they say, a different drummer. Now, Ambassador Lindner entered diplomatic service in 1988 and has served in numerous postings in Germany's Federal Foreign Office, such as the Deputy Head of the Task Force for Human Rights, the Federal Foreign Office spokesperson, and spokesperson for Foreign Minister Fischer. He has been the German ambassador in a number of countries, including Kenya, Seychelles, Venezuela, South Africa, and now India. So Ambassador Lindner, just in case you're wondering what that first opening comment of mine was all about, is of course a trained musician. He has done many strange things which are not normally associated with diplomats. He's driven taxis, he's driven trucks in his early years. It has allowed him, his musical talent has allowed him to go to the esteemed Berklee College of Music. He has multiple studio albums, and he continues to make music even today. So today, it is with a singular sense of anticipation that I am, I'm sure, echoing your own sentiments in listening to this great virtuoso. Ambassador, the floor is yours. Please do share your views with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Admiral, and you make me blush with all the things you say. Of course, I want to first say welcome to everyone who is listening, and to the organizers, of course, Amir, and I see my old friend Priyanka. We met here in the place, so you know where we are. And of course, Petra Sigmund and Tobias Lindner, and my colleagues from Delhi, the ambassadors of France and of the EU, and Member of Parliament, Mr. Kaisweter. So it's good to have Indian friends or friends of India around me. Now, I'm sitting here in the Taj Palace Hotel, just opposite the gateway. So I tried to be smart, and I thought we create some kind of a live condition. As you mentioned, you know, as a musician, you be on stage, you need live conditions. So behind me is the gateway. You can see it or you can't see it, but it's very noisy, and the internet is very, it could be better. You have to bear with me. I don't want to add very much, because after Petra Sigmund has said already many of the important things, and Tobias also, I just want to give you my impression from this morning, because this morning we received the frigate, and you know, even if you are whatever is your expert knowledge about military and about your personal stance to military, you see such a boat and such a ship, and it gives you some kind of goosebumps, because it is big and it's an expression of something. Now, if you imagine that this frigate goes 7 months and through the Indian Ocean and the Pacific, then you can imagine it leaves some kind of impression. It's not a military might, as you have said, or as Petra has said, but it gives a kind of a message. And the message, I think, was explained before: freedom of keep the trade lines open, respect for international agreements, international law of the sea, and peaceful solution of conflicts. Now, if other big nations have done this before, yes. Germany, so far, we weren't too much present here. It's I think, as Petra said, because we are, of course, dealing mostly with the dangers which come towards Europe, and this is mostly around us. But more and more, also in Europe, I think, even at nations which are not in the Security Council, the conviction has started that this region of the east of the Pacific Ocean, South China Sea, is growing more and more important, economically, politically, and in many other senses. 50% of the global population lives there anyway. So what I wanted to conclude with is, when this ship come in, of course, goosebumps, yes, but also a lot of interest by Indian journalists. There were a lot of camera teams, and even yesterday before we left, and here also, they all asked the same questions. Why does Germany do this now? What is the message? And does this mean that we are more frequent there? Is this aimed against one nation and all the things? I have done a lot of interviews today. That's why I don't want to answer everything now. And Petra has already answered many of the things, but it shows, it's noted by the public in India that there is something going on. When the Germans now are coming from this area, and the Germans have these new guidelines, and the EU guidelines are out there, some other European nations are working on their guidelines too. There must be some conviction that this area has more importance than it had before. And I think that's why we walk the talk. Seeing that, I wanted to be here. Even we had our head of our Navy in Delhi. I still wanted to be here and wanted to get this own feeling. What does it mean? You see this ship like they did in Vietnam, like they did in Australia, like they did in Malaysia, and in other places. What kind of feelings do you create there? Is it kind of, oh gosh, the Germans come? Or is it more, no, international attention is there? And I think it's the last letter. So with these words, I want to say I'm happy to be here in Mumbai. I'm happy to be among friends of India, and the discussion is not a theoretical one, just in think tanks. It's a discussion which comes into more concrete steps, seeing this ship, but also development projects and other projects. So it's more and more tangible what we try to express here. Thank you very much, and thanks again for your wise words.
Well, thank you, Ambassador. You never disappoint. And I myself have had the great privilege of interacting with the Inspector General of the Deutsche Marine just earlier this afternoon. And so I am fully aware of the double-barreled charm offensive, and it is particularly effective that is being mounted by Germany. And it's very impressive indeed. So thank you once again. Now, to build on what His Excellency has just said, we, of course, are once again privileged to have a simply stellar panel of 4 experts. And I would like you to allow me to introduce them very briefly, just a couple of lines on each, because each of them is enjoys global renown, and really speaking doesn't need any introduction. But let me start with Colonel Roderick Kaisweter, who is a sitting member of parliament of the German Bundestag. He began his career in the German Armed Forces, always a good place to begin, being posted to the European Council of and then of NATO, as well as the German Ministry of Defense. He left the army as a colonel after being elected to parliament in 2009. He is a member of the Committee on Foreign Affairs, as well as deputy chairman of the subcommittee for disarmament, arms control, and non-proliferation. So let me first and foremost welcome you, Colonel Kaisweter, to this particular panel. And, threatening, of course, all the time to overshadow all of us is the Honorable Ms. Priyanka Chaturvedi, who is a sitting member of parliament in the Rajya Sabha of India from the state of Maharashtra. She is the deputy leader of the Shiv Sena, and as a trustee of 2 non-government organizations, she works to promote children's education, women's empowerment, and health. And she has been a columnist for Tehelka, for Daily News and Analysis, which is DNA, and the First Post. And I'm sure that she will bring to bear a number of really important and new perspectives to our discussion. The third of my stellar panel is, of course, someone who needs no introduction at all. His Excellency Ugo Astuto, who is the current ambassador of the European Union to India. Now, the ambassador has many, many years of experience as an Italian diplomat, as the Director General of the National Maritime Foundation. We have been privileged to have his support on many occasions in the past and look forward to a continuation in the future. He served in India previously as well between 2008 and 2012 as the Deputy Head of Mission. And from 13 to 16, he was seconded to the European External Action Service, first as the Director for South and Southeast Asia, and then as the Deputy Managing Director and the Director for Asia and the Pacific. And then from 16 to 19, he was the Principal Director for Asia at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Rome. So nobody can argue with his sheer depth and breadth of experience. And bringing up the finale for our panel today is His Excellency Emmanuel Lindner, who is the current ambassador of France to India. And Ambassador Lindner began his career with the Ministry of Europe and Foreign Affairs in 1997. He was involved early on in his career with peace negotiations in Kosovo. He has extensive experience as a diplomat, and this includes postings to the French mission at the United Nations in New York, the French embassy to China in Beijing, and that is something that we want to be able to tap into. He's been with the French consulate in Shanghai. He's also been with the embassy in Washington, D.C. Ambassador Lindner has the distinction of having served as a diplomatic and foreign advisor to two separate prime ministers of France. He is fluent in French, in English, in Mandarin, in German, and I suppose we could, with good justification, call him not only a polyglot, but also a man of all possible seasons. And with that brief introduction, I mean, the credentials that each of these panelists bring to bear is quite intimidating and quite awe-inspiring. So what I'm going to do is ask each of them to, if you would be so kind as to give us a feel of where you're coming from on the subject, and maybe spend about 3 or 4 minutes outlining the potential that you see for cooperation between Germany and India, and whether this cooperation is meaningful. Do we need to stovepipe it in any way? Can we synergize the many facets of this cooperation? And perhaps I would ask the panelists to lead off with about 3 or 4 minutes of introductory comments, pretty much in the order that I introduced. So we can maybe ask you to launch our ship of discussion for now. Thank you very much. There you go.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Vice Admiral, for having me on a very, I would say, enlightening panel, as well as a very empowered panel. It is with gratitude, I would say, that I get a chance to speak on issues that concern better relations for India and European Union. And firstly, I want to begin with welcoming Bayern to Mumbai. We were very excited to have Bayern here, dock here in Mumbai. In fact, I was looking to get on board, but unfortunately, COVID has restricted our movements in the city. However, I think it is also an indicator with Bayern being docked here in Mumbai, but the long-standing and I would say mutually enriching relationship that we've had with Germany over the years. And Mumbai particularly happens to be sister cities to two of the cities in Germany. So we're looking forward to having more of such engagements. And in fact, we are already, India already is engaging a lot more with Germany as ever before, and will continue to do so. I'm hoping with this particular interest in the Indo-Pacific that we've seen through their policies. Even France, I think France has also been a long-standing ally, and they have also been with us through it all, and they have also come up with their policy, and so has EU. Looking forward to now streamlining this forward and ensuring that we, through our various methods synergize our end, making this partnership work as far as I would say Indo-Pacific is concerned. Indo-Pacific is turning out to be the pivot in economic and political activities globally. So whether it is trade that we're looking at with the in terms of better coordination and cooperation, whether we are talking about strengthening ties in terms of tech transfers, technology, research, we're talking about environment. In fact, I had got a chance to be in Berlin uh, recently, where I saw just how much of transition that we're seeing in terms of green economy is concerned. And I think we share similar goals as far as Maharashtra is concerned, and we see how we can exchange ideas as in this particular region. Security is one important factor, and I think Ambassador Lindner has been talking about rule-based order, and Germany has quite clearly indicated that, and how some, I would say, some strong powers that believe that they can bypass certain rule-based orders and they can, through their supremacy in terms of trade, in terms of where they stand economically, they can set their own rules, which I think would be detrimental for nation. And I think that 9 most important countries coming together, especially because of the shared democratic principles that we have and common goals that we have, will perhaps take this momentum forward. So I'm looking forward to hear the rest of our panelists and seeing how we can, especially Maharashtra state, which is also where Mumbai is situated and is the financial capital of India, how we can take this forward and how partnerships can be built through subnational states. So thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chaturvedi. And since I myself am a Bombay-born and Bombay-brought-up individual, I empathize entirely with the difficulties that Mumbai is facing vis-a-vis COVID, and I'm always full of admiration for the Chalta Hai spirit that Mumbai has, and it reflects in almost everything that you say and almost everything that you do, not only you as an individual, but you as a representative of the great state of Maharashtra. So that was interesting and certainly thought-provoking. And now I'm going to try and get His Excellency Ugo Astuto on. And so, Mr. Astuto, Ambassador, can you share your own views with us before we try and get Colonel Kaisweter back again? Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Admiral. It's a great pleasure to be here with you all, with a number of all the new friends, and a big thank you for to the German Embassy for organizing and for inviting me, and a particular greeting to Director General Petra Sigmund, with whom I've had the opportunity to work in the past. So it's good to be here and mark Bayern's presence in India, a part of its tour in the Indo-Pacific. And let me say a few words about the EU-India cooperation in the Indo-Pacific and its potential. As you know, the EU-Indo-Pacific strategy was adopted September last year, and it certainly has added a new dimension to our strategic partnership with India. We as European Union and the United States, we have a clear stake in the peace and prosperity of the region. And it's a fact that India's approach to the Indo-Pacific is similar to the EU in many respects. Points of convergence that I would like to stress here include a strong emphasis on multilateral cooperation and respect for international law, and notably the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. So basically, like India, the European Union wants to stay open, stable, and rules-based. And the EU Indo-Pacific strategy goes beyond the maritime security domain, let's say. It covers a range of areas of cooperation. And the EU and India are natural partners in many of the areas which are included in the EU strategy, from trade, connectivity, to the green transition, the digital transformation. And India has also proved a key partner when it comes to addressing unexpected global challenges, such as the COVID epidemic we are now facing. Last year, our leaders in May launched the EU-India Connectivity Partnership. Petra mentioned it. Let me also underscore that these are highly relevant in the Indo-Pacific context, all the more so in the broader framework of the Global Gateway initiative launched by the President of the Commission. The region definitely needs quality infrastructure underpinned by the principles of transparency, of inclusivity, sustainability, both social and environmental sustainability. As the President of the Commission says, we want to create links, not dependencies, with our engagement in connectivity. And this is also true for India. Our cooperation in security and defense is also picking up. Let me recall that last summer, the Indian Navy and the EU Atalanta naval mission off the shore of the coast of Somalia conducted a joint naval exercise. And we want to do more. And the port calls, the presence of the frigate Bayern today in Mumbai, I think is evidence of this growing relationship between Europe and India, also on the maritime security side. But also referred very rightly to the economic agenda. So let me also remind that our leaders in May decided to relaunch free trade agreement and to start new negotiation on investment protection and geographical indications. The gains would be huge for both our economies, and economic integration and the security of global supply chains are another shared interest for the EU and India. So let me conclude here by restating that the ties between the EU and India are stronger than ever, and that we have a clear convergence of interest in the Indo-Pacific and beyond. And we shall build on this convergence of interest, as well as on our shared democratic values in the pursuit of global common goods. Thank you, Vasa.
Thank you, Ambassador. As always, a magisterial view and perspective. I will, however, take up some of the points that you've raised on what constitutes maritime security and whether it is limited to military security alone. This is, I think, a trap that we should be careful to avoid, but this is not the moment for me to wax eloquent with my own little views. However, it is with, once again, great pleasure and a sense of anticipation that I turn to our third speaker. I haven't forgotten you, Colonel, but let me first ask His Excellency Emmanuel Lindner to present perhaps the French perspective to the discussion so far. About 3 or 4 minutes, Ambassador.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Well, thank you, Admiral, and thank you to the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung and to the National Maritime Foundation for organizing this event. Delighted to be with you. Actually, I should be Mumbai today, also with my friend Walter, and I'm a bit sorry that given Omicron and sanitary constraints, we couldn't make it. We have decided to celebrate the German Friendship Day, which is 22nd of January every year, which is the anniversary of the Traité de l'Élysée, and which was reinforced by a new treaty in 2019. And we were looking forward to that occasion. And I would have loved to see frigate Bayern, because contrary to Walter, I love military ships, and I would be delighted to see it. And I go as often as I can. Actually, we have quite a few military ships passing to Mumbai, to Goa, and to other places in India every year, and we're going to have more in the coming months again. And we're planning, and it's important because it has a really Indo-Pacific dimension, we are planning a very large military exercise in the framework of IONS in a few weeks, and it's going to be also very important. As said, I mean, I'm delighted that we can see more of Europe and the European Union in the Indo-Pacific. I've heard the nice words by the Foreign Secretary saying that countries outside of the region were welcome to provide security to sustain the rule-based order and in the region. Basically, we feel France that we are a country of the region actually, and that geography doesn't lie. I mean, we have territories, we have French citizens in the region. I mean, obviously, compared to India's population, it's not huge, but we have 1.5 million, which is not too bad for us. And we have a large economic exclusive zone, which makes it the second largest in the world, just next to the US, which means we have also some key interest to defend in the region. And we do so, as I said, with our navy, but also with permanent troops which are deployed in the region. And we have more than 7,000 armed forces secure in the region. That being said, I mean, the Indo-Pacific is really at the core of our policy. I mean, we've had a policy since 2018, and we fully back and on board with the EU strategy, which feels it's a great document. I hope that a large audience can have a look to it in India. I mean, it was released in September last year, but it's exactly what we want to do. It means it's very encompassing. It's not just focused on security, which is important, but it's also about connectivity. It's also about sustainable environment. It's many things, and it's positive, and it aims at providing alternative. We don't want to be confrontational. We want to provide solution. Obviously, we all know what we have in mind. I mean, we have to balance and the rise of China in the region. We are not satisfied with it's been said by the debt trap, but the strings that are attached to the financing that comes in the region. We've seen some countries, neighbors to India, which have given away their port, their infrastructures for a century. It's not acceptable, and we want to pool resources with like-minded countries like India to provide alternatives which are green, which are sustainable, which are transparent, and which are in keeping with our values. And that's very important. That's what we want to do. And as current presidency of the EU, we're going to move forward on that. I mean, it's a big priority, as you may know. There will be a forum on the Indo-Pacific on the 22nd of February with all the EU foreign ministers and also key foreign ministers from the region. External Affairs Minister Jaishankar has agreed to join, and we're delighted to have him. He will be in a keynote position, and I'm sure that on that occasion, we will be able to announce some concrete outcome for the Indo-Pacific strategy. Because now I think we have a conceptual framework, but it's important that we deliver and that we increase the intelligence sharing, that we increase the number of patrols in the region, that we launch now some joint development project to provide alternative. I think it is very key. And so I'm delighted that you took the initiative to organize this, and delighted of the role that Germany is taking into this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. And now it is with great pleasure that I turn back to one more German voice, and we need to hear as many as we possibly can. Let me turn back once again to Colonel Roderick Kaisweter. Colonel, if you can try and give us a perspective from where you're sitting, it would be really useful to us all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, Admiral, dear Excellencies and colleagues. I'm a member of Parliament since nearly 15 years, and with the acting Chief of the Navy, I worked at SHAPE's office in the vicinity of Secure some 15 years ago. But now I'm a directly elected member of Parliament since more than a decade. And it's really important to see a strong European voice in this context. I'm grateful to Ambassador Astuto and the French ambassador. Only together as European Union and in a close combination with France and Rome, Italy and Germany, we can overcome the impasse is just experiencing due to the Brexit, due to the pressure on the European Union from threats, but also from the migration question in the Mediterranean. This is really an enlightening sign that we Europeans are not focused on our own challenges, but that we try to reach out to cooperate with like-minded nations in the Indo-Pacific. And it is really a strong sign, not only the visit of the German frigate, which is only a single vessel, but it is a sign that Germany aligns itself with the United Kingdom, with France, to show the flag in the region. And this cooperation shows also the European endeavor that the like-minded nations need to cooperate. And I'm really delighted and grateful to the organizers, especially also to the Konrad-Adenauer Foundation. In the region, we have challenges, and I would like to mention some. There are some megatrends like digitalization and disruptive technologies, which are exploited especially from China. Second, we have migration, but migration is not a purpose on its own. It's induced by climate change, it's induced by failed states, and it's also induced by religious fundamentalism. And we have demography as well. We have youth bulge in some areas of the world, and we have also aged societies. And therefore, there is the need of cooperation of like-minded democracies. Second remark, I believe it's also a signal, and I'm grateful to the office and the government, that we did not visit also China. Because we need to show a clear signal as Germans that we do not want to please everybody. We want to strengthen the cooperation amongst like-minded nations. This does not exclude visits to China, but it should not be all in one passage. So therefore, I believe we are honored that India is receiving the German frigate with such a cordial warmth. And on the other side, we are looking forward to further and closer cooperation with India. And I'm also very grateful that we have an excellent summit last year and a very good cooperation with India. The Pacific region, and this is my third remark, is for Germany one of the most strategically important geopolitical regions, not only due to the fact that 62% of the world's GDP and 46% of the world's merchandise trade are there. The German government adopted in September 2020 the already mentioned guidelines for the Indo-Pacific. And it's up to us parliamentarians to vitalize this, not only to have a paper, but to be credible and to be present, and also to underline this with visits in the region, not only from governmental side, but also from the parliamentary side. Because strategic competition for influence is increasing. The rise of China and its Belt and Road Initiative, for example, and we try with the Gateway Initiative, years too late, but at least we start with an European initiative. And I invite also, and I'm grateful to my Indian parliamentary colleague, I invite also our Indian colleagues from the parliament that we build upon also this Gateway Initiative for exchange where we can develop and for our relationships. Due to the fact that we also want to discuss, I would like to be very brief at the end. But Germany and India are strategic partners in the political area. Both are vibrant democracies and share the same values. Both are champions in a rule-based global order, both within the United Nations and as partner in the Alliance for Multilateralism. Germany and India are strategic partners in the political area. They are both like-minded democracies with common values. Both champion a rules-based global order within the United Nations, and also with regard to the question how to fight against climate change, how to work for education, training, building, vocational training, innovation in economies. So we as parliamentarians should also try to strengthen our partnership. And this is why I'm very thankful for this opportunity and the invitation to participate in the event. I kept my remarks very brief so that we have also some room for intensive discussion. Thank you so much, and good luck also for all of you in the region.
No, thank you. Thank you, Excellency, for affording us so succinctly points of view that was so germane. Now, I'm going to open this up for some discussion between the panelists so that we don't end up in a series of, sterile presentations with no challenges and no rebuttals. So I want to first ask you to bear with me when I bring, using the prerogative of my moderator's position, bring out one perspective of my own that I would like you to comment upon. And that is that, several speakers have tried to indicate that there is, this is not only about security. So I want to emphasize one adjective. Please, let's look at holistic maritime security, not military maritime security alone. And if you look at the word holistic and use that, then a typology. First of all, in India, the Prime Minister of India, a Prime Minister of India has actually, for a change, been absolutely crystal clear in identifying what is maritime security. And he said that maritime security is freedom from threats arising in the sea or from the sea or through the sea. And these threats could be man-made, of course. They could be traditional. They could be non-traditional. They could be natural threats, for example, cyclones and tsunamis. And they could be combinations of these, that is climate change, ocean acidification, areas beyond national jurisdiction and the challenges that they pose, biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction, and all of these constitute India's primary maritime interest, which is freedom from threats arising in the sea, from the sea, through the sea. If we wish to use the seas for connectivity, if we want to use the seas for the blue economy, and there are threats to them, whether those threats come from man-made causes, natural causes, or combinations, we need to address that, and that is what is meant by holistic maritime security. And I thought that it was important enough to be able to say that. And now that I have got that off my chest, so to speak, I wanted to turn to Ms. Chaturvedi and ask her once again that, in this whole business of cooperation, you bring a voice which is, of course, it is a voice of government. Of course, it's a voice of the sagacity of government in India and in Maharashtra in particular, but also it is a voice that seeks to provide for other lesser, lesser worked upon areas, for example, the blue economy. And when you said that we are determined to go for alternatives, let me try and offer you some of the problems that exist. If you look at batteries and we decide that we're going to shift our transport sector across to electricity, then we're going to have one of two kinds of batteries at the moment. We're going to have lithium-ion batteries or nickel-cadmium batteries, and both of them need cobalt. And all the cobalt is either in the DRC or it needs to be found in the seabed. And then that has its own implications on precisely the areas that we're worried about in terms of ecological degradation or an inadequate environmental impact assessment. So before, my chat box is getting fuller and fuller with the questions from the audience, but this is one that I really wanted you to address. And so how do you see the India-Germany? There are many areas of high technology, Port 4.0, of bringing Industry 4.0 into, the port of Hamburg comes to mind almost immediately. And yet we are in danger of either falling into that void between Industry 4.0 and Port 4.0, and perhaps Maharashtra would, as so often in the past, lead the way for an Indian Renaissance and an Indo-German Renaissance in these areas. Ma'am.
So, firstly, I'd also forgot to mention that there's one big commonality that both Maharashtra and Germany have at this point in time. The traffic light coalition that we see, the government that has come into power there, is quite similar to the Mahavikas Aghadi model that we see in Maharashtra, where three diverse parties have come together with the sole intent of addressing these issues, addressing these problems. And we must understand Maharashtra also is at a point where it understands its responsibility, its role in the 21st century, and how dynamics are changing towards sustainable goals as well as economic growth stories while going green. So the transitions become very important, and we are definitely looking at partnerships, and we are trying to also get best of technology coming from Germany. Like I mentioned initially in my opening remarks, that we are sister cities as well. So we are going to use those mediums also to create more exchanges, and hoping that we find out all the commonalities as far as environmental concerns, environmental degradation is concerned, and how we can, how Germany can offer us that expertise. So we're very open to that idea. And also, it also becomes imperative to mention here that for India to transition towards a more greener economy, a sustainable economy, an economy that takes the youth along as far as skilling is concerned, we would have to go green, like how Europe is going. And we would need to set our targets much higher, and state governments also would be leading that change. Maharashtra is committed to that. Thankfully, we have a very dynamic environment minister who is very keen on leading this transition. We have one of the best EV policies in the country right now, and we're inviting partnerships from from every part of the world to come invest in Maharashtra, come share your expertise with us. And we are looking at such partnerships which will only strengthen relationships across board. And considering, like someone mentioned earlier, we are natural allies, whether we look at Germany, we look at France, we look at other European Union members. So we'll look at these challenges. Yes, of course, there are many challenges that will come in this transition too. How do you overcome these challenges? When we talk about cooperation and collaboration, less of confrontation, I think these relationships will test us through this all, but we need to come out of it together, simply because we need to set a new global order which talks about cooperation, coalition, coexistence, cooperation, rather than being confrontational on every issue and challenge authority and global order at every given point in time.
Thank you very much. That's absolutely brilliant. And I also want to be able to plug, give a plug for the National Maritime Foundation and its interaction with the state government in Maharashtra. We are deeply engaged in working out port resilience for Mumbai port, and this is something that I would like to take up with you later. But as I said, we have a full-up chat box with questions coming in thick and fast. So I'm going to try and weave some of those in. And since many of them, or all of them, can be addressed by anybody, and the panel is well equipped at an individual level to answer this collectively as well. The first is from, I'm not going to read out the person who's asking the question, but just the question itself. The visit of the Bayern represents little in terms of strategic bilateral relations. Germany doesn't have the naval capacity to influence events and will be more involved in handling Russia in the West. So does Germany seek to deepen the strategic aspect of Indo-Pacific security through a defense technology partnership with India, through some intergovernmental mechanism towards enhancing India's self-reliance effort, which is Atmanirbhar in Hindi? So I think that this is a pointed sort of question. It segues rather neatly from where Priyanka left off. So perhaps I will turn back to Roderick and ask whether he would like to voice an answer to this particular question. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much indeed for this brilliant question. There is a big difference amongst some European nations. In Germany, there is private-owned industry, so it's not a state-owned industry. And there is a big difference, for example, in comparison to France. However, Germany has a strong interest in armaments cooperation with India, for example, as regards Airbus or some other military defense issues in the vessel industry. But there is always needed a private trigger to start this. From the state side, we are very reluctant regarding that. So it would be really helpful to take this up also from the parliamentary side. But there is a strong interest as regards cooperation in air defense, in airspace, and in maritime issues. And I believe we need to strengthen this not only because India is in our listed partnership, not part of those areas who are crisis areas. Germany has committed itself not to export armaments equipment to areas where crises exist. I believe on a personal basis that this is wrong. We must export where our interests are and not where crises are. So I believe that a stronger cooperation in this context will be helpful. Second remark, the European industry, defense industry, needs more harmonization and standardization and more cooperation. So if you cooperate with one of the European nations, you will also, due to the supply chain, cooperate with many of them. Therefore, I am very much in favor to create a closer European-Indian armaments cooperation, industrial cooperation in this context. And I believe this could be vitalized, and we should also encourage both sides to speed up with negotiations and cooperations.
Thank you very much. That's very well put. And I think one more issue that comes up, and one of the questions is indeed relating to this, is that, when we use the word strategic, we often use the word strategic, and we don't always match it to what we mean. For example, you can't have strategic is an adjective, right? So strategic presupposes that there's a strategy. Otherwise, you can't have strategic without any strategy. And France and the European Union and Germany, each of them have got a fairly robust and clear enunciation of their strategies, and their strategy, not their strategies as much as their objectives. And so if you look at the German Leitlinien, which is the guidelines that they've given, Germany identifies these 8 core interests that it has, and then it goes on, that is peace and security and diversity, and of course this business of rules-based order, which is the nub of what I want to come to, and then it develops a strategy, and it says that our strategy is to promote joint European approaches, to promote multilateralism, rules-based order, the UN SDGs, and so on and so forth, and afford centrality to ASEAN, and to oppose containment. All these are strategies which are really important. But we seem to have some difference between when we say maritime issues and maritime rules-based order. We seem to have some variation between how we in India, for example, look at maritime rules-based order already being an established outflow from UNCLOS, from the International Maritime Organization, from the manner in which ships behave in sight of one another, when they're not in sight of one another, when they are in radio communication and not. And yet we have Germany, which seems to emphasize rules-based order as the rules-based trading order. So perhaps we would like a view, and then France has a slightly more closely aligned strategy to that of India. So perhaps I will turn to Ambassador Lindner and ask him whether he might want to talk about what does the European Union, what does the French, what in his opinion, do the Germans respectively mean by rules-based order? Thank you.
Well, thank you for your question. Yeah, that's really the core of the issue. I mean, we've been living, it's been said by the German colleague a short while ago. We've been living since World War II in a world which is regulated, which is very liberal, which is where we don't want any change to be made by force, and we want all the process to be according to the laws we've agreed upon. And that's very important, and that's we feel that in spite of certain difficulties, of certain wars we've been having, the world has been much safer like this, and that's exactly what we want to enforce. So in the Indo-Pacific, it means very concretely, it means freedom of navigation. It means sovereignty of states. You cannot encroach on it by any means, political pressure, but also debt traps and other things. And we want to join forces to uphold these values in the Indo-Pacific, and that's what we're doing. That's what you have to be very pragmatic. I think there will never be too many goodwills. I mean, the Quad initiative is helpful, and we can work on a case by case basis with it. What Asian countries are trying to do is good, and the European Union, obviously, we have a major role to play given our reach. I mean, we're the largest trading power in the world, and we have means which are huge. I mean, it's been said by Ugo Astuto. I mean, when you're talking about connectivity and plans, I mean the money and the budget that's been put on the table with the Gateway plan is huge. I mean, it's 300 billion euros. I mean, it will really make a change. So basically, that's the strategy for us.
Thank you very much. That was very clear indeed. And I now want to turn across to take away from what you just said about Quad being useful, and how really does the European Union see the Quad, first of all? And secondly, does the European Union look at the Quad as a possible interface when we might have a Quad plus? And if we had a Quad plus, do you think that the European Union as a collective, and would you say that Germany and France as the leading, and Netherlands as the leading sort of exponents within the European Union would in fact embrace such an approach? So let me ask that to the most obvious candidate, which is His Excellency Mr. Astuto. Excellency, would you like to take a stab at that?
Thank you, Admiral. Well, we look very positively at the Quad as an exercise bringing together like-minded friends and partners with the objectives which was very similar to what the European Union sets for himself, which is a rules-based system of international governance based on the principles and rules that Emmanuel has very clearly enunciated not long ago. Whether the Quad wants to change its format and modalities, I think it's for the members of the Quad themselves to decide. From our side, when it comes to the European Union, what we are looking for is we are for an open and inclusive approach to the Indo-Pacific and the region. And we are particularly keen to establish a relationship with like-minded partners. India is obviously key in that respect. And what we have is not just a convergence of interests, but we have values. So when it comes to a rules-based system of international governance, when it comes to defending the freedom of the seas, the principles so clearly enshrined into the UN Convention of the Law of the Sea, we know that we can work with India and we can work with other democratic partners. So basically, the inclination of the orientation of the European Union is to be is to establish a broad embrace of all like-minded partners who are ready and willing to work with us to uphold these values and principles.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. No matter how many efforts we make to compress our speeches, our views, our perspectives, time remains our most relentless enemy. We are in grave danger of entering into serious combat with time. But I am unable to resist one last question. I know that everybody in the panel has had one opportunity to address some of the issues that have been done, and yet I want to be quite blatantly, shamelessly, drawing favorites, and I want to ask Ms. Chaturvedi. So I want to give you one more shot at something quite apart from the fact because you're Paisan and I'm, as I said, from Campion and Xavier's and Mumbai through and through. I want to ask you one thing. This is with regard to the role that non-government organizations, NGOs, might play. So far, we've tried to explore the various facets of government structures, whether at central level, federal level, state level, provincial level. But what about NGOs? Where do you see that particular uh, possibility vis-a-vis India and Germany specifically? Thank you.
So, firstly, thank you so much. I'm clearly your favorite. So, all I'd like to say is I think every section of society plays an active role. So, whether it is our NGOs, whether it's non-government actors, whether it's the civil society, whether it's the elected parliamentarians across board, there are various sections which can come to play to be able to ensure better reach, better friendship, and better, I would say, taking forward of the relationships that we enjoy. So the more we have these exchanges, the more we have dialogue, the more we talk on various formats and on various issues, the more I think that there will be understanding and a deeper understanding of what we as individual countries stand for. So I'm open for, I think any right-minded citizen would say the more exchanges that we have, the more interactions we have across various stakeholders will only be a win-win situation for all, as long as we do understand that there are certain no-go areas, even for NGOs, as far as involvement in another country is concerned. But as long as it's about the spirit of cooperation and ensuring a better life for all, I think we should cooperate in every manner possible.
Thank you very much, ma'am. And yeah, I think there is a very large scope and space here, but there is space for academia, there's space for think tanks, there's space for an interaction between government and non-government structures, not only abroad but also intra each country. So yeah, I think I agree with you in entirety. And now I'm afraid we're clean out of time. So it is with some degree of avuncular pride and institutional pride that I would like to introduce Captain Sarabjit Singh Parmar, who is the Executive Director of the National Maritime Foundation, whose chairman I'm privileged to be, and who will be uh, affording us, affording each one of you actually, a very small, very nominal token of our very great esteem and gratitude for your presence here. I also want to emphasize on my own the debt of gratitude I owe to Peter Remella and the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung, which has put this together along with the Observer Research Foundation. Please accept my thanks. And now I hand over to Captain Parmar and bow out and say thank you very much to our panel. Not before I ask our virtual audience to please put their virtual hands together and give some real round of applause to the brilliant panelists that we had for today. So I'm going to say that each of you deserves a big hand. I hope you will accept two small ones clapping like mad. Thank you very much. Sarabjit, it's over to you.
Thank you, sir. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you'll agree that this has been a very, very interesting, short but lively dialogue. A lot of doors open, a lot of issues and events covered. And it remains for me to thank all of you across the globe for taking off time and joining in this very intense discussion on potential for Indo-European and German cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. Director General NMF Vice Admiral Pradeep Chauhan had already mentioned that the National Maritime Foundation has had an interaction with Vice Admiral Schonbach, Inspector General Deutsche Marine, which is very fruitful. And this seems to be a week in which we can now sit back over the weekend, ruminate over the many ideas, many views that have been expressed, and look at the potential of further cooperation. And so, therefore, I'd like to thank all of you for taking off time for sharing your views in a very crisp and a clear manner, laying out a sort of a roadmap for future engagements. And also, I would like to thank Peter Ramel and his team, ORF, who have been patient wading through the COVID situation. We have seen this program turn many trees around. We would have loved to have been in Mumbai, had a discussion on the Bayern, the forecastle or the quarterdeck of Bayern. And of course, for those who love ships, I think there's nothing better than having a nice scotch on the deck of a good ship and discussing matters strategic. Nothing becomes more clearer than that. So I think we can look forward to more such engagements, and we hope that Germany does send more ships, as does France, be more livelier. And I'd also thank the team of the Observer Research Foundation for having put all this together and getting the list of luminary speakers together out here. Many voices from the European Union. So I would thank His Excellency, Mr. Estuto, for representing the EU and putting forward his points very clearly. The Ambassador of France, His Excellency Manuel Lenin, for his very crisp and clear views of France. And of course, to Mr. Roderick Kaisweter, Colonel Kaisweter, Member of Parliament from Germany, and Mrs. Priyanka Chaturvedi, our Member of Parliament from India, for bringing in the views of the polity. And we hope that at the strategic and other levels, we will be able to match the views expressed of the elected representatives with the intents of many nations that have, and the views that we have hoisted out here. So with that, I wish you safe travels wherever you are. Stay safe, take care. COVID hasn't left us. And once again, looking forward to many such more engagements. And I'd like to hand over back to the organizers. Thank you very much.